2024 Ibrahim Forum Report titled Finance in Africa, Where is the Money? Explored the intricate financial landscape of Africa as the continent endeavors to meet its development and climate goals. The report offered a critical analysis of Africa's financial requirements, the available sources of funding, and the challenges linked to mobilizing resources both domestically and internationally. Africa confronts significant financial obstacles in achieving its development goals, particularly the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union's Agenda 2063. Despite being almost two-thirds of the way to the 2030 deadline, progress on the SDGs have been minimal, with only 2 out of 17 goals showing considerable advancement. This morning from Dortmund in Germany, Dr. Richard Adu-Gyamfi, ESB Business School, Reutlingen University, joins me. Thank you so much, Dr. Adu-Gyamfi, for joining me.
Many thanks, Likan. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Now, given the staggering financial requirements for Africa to achieve its development and climate goals, as outlined in that report, what are the most critical bottlenecks preventing the continent from accessing the necessary capital?
Yeah, thanks very much. First and foremost, let me start by saying, this is one of the most comprehensive finance report on Africa's financing needs so far. And I would actually urge all and sundry, all Africans who are interested in Africa's development to take a look at this document. But coming to your question, basically, there are quite a number of issues which are at hand now. One point is the illicit financial flows, which is more than $100 billion annually leaving the continent. And this amount is already 3 times that of what I would say official development assistance. And official development assistance are those more or less grants or support which come from outside the continent, basically. So illicit financial flows is one point. The fact that we have a very large informal base, informal sector base, also makes it difficult for government to generate revenue to fund to consider our financial needs. That is also one thing. Yeah, and of course the fact that we are unable to add value to our raw materials. I think we will discuss quite a number of issues there, but basically putting this together, the fact that we are unable to add value to our vast raw materials plays a lot of hinders how we are able to access funds, because when there's a product, the price for a product is far more higher than, or it has value than when it is in its raw state, so to say, as we speak. So, and on that basis, tax and government taxes, it's always lower when it is on raw materials, but it's higher when there's more value. And based on that, that could then be a point where government can generate resources to be able to finance continent needs. So in many ways, I would say illicit financial flows, the fact that we have a strong informal base, and of course, the fact that we're unable to add value to our raw materials hinders why we are unable to finance at the moment.
Okay, so a couple of challenges you've actually highlighted there, but then we also see that there's equally financial resource gap when you look at it from that angle, a significant gap between the financial resource required for climate adaptation and mitigation in Africa. So how can the global community prioritize adaptation financing to even help the continent ensure a bit of resilience when it comes to combating these climate change impacts?
Yeah, well, I would say basically what could be done is to separate development finance from climate finance.
Dr. Richard? I think we just lost connection with Dr. Richard Adu-Gyamfi there. Of course, he has been helping us understand what it needs to be done as regards the challenges Africa is facing when it comes to the climate issues and the financing needed to bridge the gap and mitigate its attendant effects. Dr. Richard Adu-Gyamfi, thank you so much that you are still there with us. I'd like you to conclude on what needs to be done when we talk about adaptation in terms of financing.
was basically not to lump them together. I mean, development finance, which I talked about, more to do with health, education. That is in most cases, that is the direction in which the development finance goes. And then, of course, climate finance, which is for adaptation and mitigation. Yeah. These should not be mixed because the development finance sometimes they come as loans, and Africa is already distressed with debt. So these loans would add up, and it wouldn't be able to take care of its climate needs. That is supporting countries that are affected of climate issues, which they did not even actually cause themselves. So separating development finance from climate finance I think, is the way to go.
Now, we understand that the reports also underscore the substantial potential of Africa's green assets. So what are the most promising avenues for monetizing these assets, and what policy frameworks are even necessary to maximize their contribution to sustainable development?
Thank you. This is an age-old question which is still looming, and it's good you've brought it up because well, let me start from this way. Our green assets would be, for instance, nowadays the lithium, the cobalt, that which we are using a lot in electric vehicles for batteries to power electric vehicles and as such. The issue is basically one thing. It's still in the raw form. We are unable to process them in Africa. So that becomes a big problem. Because once I mentioned it in the beginning, if it is not if value is not added in the beginning, of course you lose a lot of value or money within. A very clear example, the cocoa industry or the cocoa value chain, if you will like, is such that Africa produces more of the raw materials, and then countries like Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, France, United States, they don't produce any cocoa at all, but they are the controllers of the industry simply because they're able to add value to this. And that is what we have not been able to do, even in the conventional sense, I mean, cocoa. And then, of course, our green assets, lithium, copper, cobalt, and all these. So if we are unable to add value to them, then once again, it will be business as usual. So that is the only way we can do. Policy framework will be good, but it's more in the doing than just the mere policy frameworks. That is actually converting our raw materials into finished products. For example, car batteries. Then we can have more businesses on the continent. There will be employment. So it has a ripple effect, so to say. So when we talk about adding value to our green assets, then clearly we are just going beyond just the value addition to include so many issues.
It's quite interesting and ironic that despite the fact that Nigeria has a huge potential in green assets and provides or supplies more of raw materials to the global market, it is still enmeshed in economic instability, and the debt stock is even set to be rising. So I'd like to find out what strategies you think African governments can actually employ to manage its debts effectively and even prevent a debt crisis.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way would have been to avoid going for loans at all. That would be the easiest way, but it wouldn't work that way. But I think that we will need to have a very strong resource mobilization mechanism in Africa. And what I mean is simple, that we have I mentioned it in the beginning, we have a very large informal sector. Now, if we were able to devise means to make these informal businesses formal, so that we can capture their data, then of course there could be the leverage where they could have access to finance. And when they have access to finance, they can improve upon their businesses, they can employ them more. And then of course that gives the government the basis to also come in with the tax for revenue, which will be used for developmental projects and also for sustainable development. So if we are able to generate more money, in any case, Africa generates 70% of all its resource, all its finance internally. So there is official development assistance, there is FDI, there is also money coming from remittances. But we shouldn't forget that Africa is doing well, collecting revenues from the continent. But that could even be far better done. And one way, from my perspective and from the report's perspective, is to have a very comprehensive mechanism that allows informal businesses or the large informal sector to be rolled into the formal sector, so that there would be the basis on which they can have access to finance and then improve their businesses. The government can actually then tax.
Okay, let's talk about the FDIs. Now, the report mentioned the perception premium that negatively impacts investment flows into Africa. We've seen instability in some areas, political, socio-economic instability. We've seen wars happen, fightings in between different powers within and around some governments, establishments in different African countries. But then how can the continent, as a whole, improve its investment climate to attract more foreign direct investment and portfolio investments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need to sell our own story better. Let me put it this way. I mean, media coverages, and I would actually say Lekan Business Edge is doing a good job. If you can use the platform to promote Africa as a place of destination, not as a place of investment destination, but to counter Africa as poor, Africa as gloomy, and Africa as all the negative stereotypes we may have, it's that perception will immediately dissolve, or with time it will dissolve. And that is one thing which we really need to work on. The fact that we have a business environments, we have different regulatory frameworks on the continent, which are in many ways not harmonized, because we are talking about Africa, not the very individual countries in Africa. But if we're able to harmonize business regimes, as the AFCFTA, that is the African Continental Free Trade Area, is seeking to do, then of course that will give us the leverage on which we can improve our investment climate. I mean, there is also the fact that the credit rating agencies need to factor some criteria which has not always been there. For example, carbon credits or climate countries which are less demanding or causing less emissions in carbon. This could be a plus for Africa, because basically there is so much we have in this realm, which is not in all those credit rating agencies, criteria for assessing whether you are credit worthy or not. And these changes, which is on the international side, can have a very positive impact on Africa.
All right, Dr. Richard Adu-Gyamfi, ESB Business School, Reutlingen University in Germany. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah.